So the Gen 3 season has finally began, and how did it go after round 1? Well, we're about to find out. This is the THRIFTY Newcastle 500 debrief. Well, Gen 3 is finally here after many, many years of waiting, preparing, building, etc. It's finally here, and what an interesting start. To be honest, I'm going to straight off say it. It was a bit disappointing, to be honest. There was a lot to talk about from this weekend. So how I'm going to structure this is I'm going to talk about Saturday, then talk about Sunday. And then I'm actually going to give my thoughts on how Gen 3 went this weekend, my opinion on it. And then if you know or have you seen the news, there's a lot going on regarding Shane Van Gisbergen and the Supercars media. I'll get into that afterwards as well and have my take on that. But let's just get straight into Saturday. So I'm not even going to mention about Friday. You know what? Why not? I'll quickly mention it. It was literally just practice. We had 3 sessions, 3 45-minute session, and it was interesting. It wasn't a lot, there wasn't a lot to talk about. We didn't really get much of a form guide. Of course, Saturday is when the drivers really properly had a crack. The only thing to take away from Friday was the heating in the car. I think Shane Van Gisbergen specifically complained about how hot it is in the car. It's so much hotter than the Gen 2 cars. So what Supercars did for the rest of the weekend, they actually allowed teams to create ways on keeping the interior cooler. I think I might as well get into this now. I don't know if they did this in response to Friday or they did it prior, but AAA, they decided to place their dry ice cool box on the right-hand side, so the driver's side, which was a big no-no. If you ask Mark Dutton, he was saying on the broadcast that Adrian Burgess basically gave the he complimented the idea, but he never really said no to it. But also he never really gave approval as well. So technically in a way, AAA went ahead and had it on the right hand side without technically getting approval, and ultimately they were actually disqualified from the Saturday race. But because in regulations, it states that the ice box needs to be on the left-hand side, mounted onto the passenger seat, which they failed to do. Sunday they did, but unfortunately Saturday they didn't. It wasn't about performance advantage or anything like that. It was more of a safety issue, as I'm pretty sure, as basically the right-hand side is anything there is meant to be just basically a crash box in a way. So, and they actually had a really fantastic Saturday race as well. And so they actually ultimately got a 1-2, and unfortunately they were disqualified from it. And I'll get into the result a little bit after. But besides from that, Saturday, it was, I'm going to be honest, it was quite underwhelming, especially the race. Qualifying, though, was incredible. It was probably one of the best top 10 shootouts we've ever seen in a long time. Just having a quick look here, basically, the gap was just insane. I think from 1 to 5th, the gap was about, or 1 to 4 even, it was 5,000th of a second, which was nuts. It was insane. One after the other, It just kept on happening. But ultimately, Brodie Kostecki ended up being the fastest ahead of Cam Waters and then Brock Feeney in third. Quick shout out to actually Tim Slade, who actually made it into the shootout for the first time for Newlon Racing or Premier Hire Racing in fourth. And James Golding as well in 10th as well. So it was pretty surprising actually to see them do so well. They actually did quite well this weekend. However, in the race, unfortunately on Saturday, they had a lot of dramas in regards to pits. But the race itself, I wouldn't call it racing. There was barely any on-track racing, if any. It was more of a giant pit strategy race. So whoever had the best strategy and whoever could manage their tyres better would be the winner. Of course, this weekend, they actually used the soft compound, which it was the tyre wear was quite awful. Because of the new cars with less downforce, they're more taily, they're harder to drive, which means it puts more load onto the tyre and just wears it out quicker than it would compared to last year's car. So it was all about it was all about managing tyres basically and racing to a number, which is quite often what it usually is, but in my opinion, this track just it wasn't really exciting. The cars were too wide for this track and there wasn't many overtaking opportunities. Every time you would think Shane Van Gisbergen would pass Cam Waters, Cam Waters would block down the inside and, that wouldn't happen. He eventually did get past him, but it did take a while, though. But in saying that, as I did mention before, no racing basically happened. It was a bit boring, I must admit. But Shane Van Gisbergen ultimately crossed the line first. At the start of the race, he looked like he was quite slow for a while there, but you could already tell that he was just managing his tyres. He actually had quite a long stint, I believe 30 odd laps or so, in both races. He actually had quite long stints. He just managed his tyres so much better than everyone else on the track, and which ultimately led to his domination in race one. He managed to cross the line first, as I said, followed by his teammate Brock Feeney. However, they did end up getting disqualified due to that icebox issue. And at the current time of this recording, they did appeal, but I don't know whether that's actually, been approved or declined yet. I'll probably find out later in the week. But for now, they have been disqualified. So I'm going to run through the race results real quick. So because of that, Cameron Waters actually was the winner. Was the first ever Gen 3 winner. Mustang were the first ever winners, and ultimately he led the championship on Sunday. So he had the famous orange sticker. Followed by, in second place was Chaz Mostert in Walkinshaw's Mustang, the first time out in that Mustang. So pretty decent start for them. Another decent start was for Brodie Kostecki, who actually led. He had a very fast car in qualifying. Top qualifying, topped the shootout. He led the first half of the race, but he just didn't. The car didn't have the pace to hold that win, especially when it came to Shane Van Gisbergen. But it's nice to see them get a trophy at the end of the day. Will Brown, his teammate, came home in fourth, so a very solid day for the Coca-Cola Racing by Erebus squad. That's what they're called now. Brilliant looking car, though. It's incredible looking. Love the livery. Just the cars in general this year, just fantastic. Another fantastic car, and one of my predictions, Andre Heimgartner. I did say he would do well this weekend, and he definitely did. He was definitely up there in practice on Friday, qualifying as well. He even made it to the shootout. So to come home in fifth is a pretty solid run for the BJR crew. Mark Winterbottom was also another one that I said that would do fairly well this weekend. He definitely did, coming home in 6th position. 7th was his teammate Scotty Pye in the Hino Team 18 mobile. 8th was James Courtney, and 9th was Jack LeBrock, and then rounding up the top 10 was David Reynolds in the Penrite Racing. Now I forgot to mention Will Brown though as well, but as well as him, David Reynolds struggled massively with body temp. He was exhausted. He looked as red as the Coca-Cola cars. He actually said he was actually afraid of the race on Sunday, and well, he did quite well that Sunday. So, but Saturday he just struggled massively. So to come home in 10th, a really good result by him. Now 11th, Will Davison, Shell V-Power Racing. They were nowhere. It was very disappointing weekend for both him and Anton. Even Sunday, I'll get into that as well. But Saturday specifically, shocking qualifying. He started where he finished pretty much. They were nowhere this weekend, unfortunately. Now, Scafie and others have mentioned that because they spent a lot of time designing the Mustang for everyone, they had to split their resources between that and actually designing their own car. But I don't know if that's a fair excuse. I know it's a lot of work, but you can see, for example, Triple Eight, they designed the Camaro, but yet they were able to do so well this weekend. But I just hope this is just a one-off. I hope we can see them doing well, especially at the GP. But very disappointing weekend from them overall. 12th was Matt Payne, his debut drive. He managed to finish fairly well, actually. Stayed out of trouble, started 22nd. So to climb his way to 12th isn't a bad result for him. 13th was Declan Fraser, another rookie. Of course, he won the Super 2 title last year. I was actually quite proud of his driving Saturday. Kept off the wall, stayed out of trouble, started 24th, and climbed his way to 13th. So, nothing to be ashamed of. He did really well. So good work by the young Tickford driver. Following behind him in 14th was Todd Hazelwood, his first race for the Cool Drive entry. He did all right. I didn't see much of him, unfortunately. He started 20th, so he did all right to move up a few positions. Then after him was Thomas Randall in 15th. Not bad result. He did actually have a drama in pit lane. He actually received, I think, a 15-second penalty or 5-second, one of the two, for contact in the pit lane. So when he went to exit after his stop, he made contact, I think, with Mark Winterbottom. So he quickly moved to the left, and then as he went to move to the right back into this fast lane, he actually made contact with one of the truck assist cars. So that's just unfortunate. It's hard to see out of these Gen 3 cars. So he wouldn't have seen them coming. I don't know. I haven't seen any interviews about it. But from what I gathered, it was just a silly mistake. It's probably very easy to do. So unfortunate for him. Then 16th was Bryce Fullwood. 17th was Anton De Pasquale. Again, similar to Will Davison, just a disappointing day for them. Pace was nowhere. He had some dramas. He actually, I forgot to mention Hazelwood. He actually got spun around by Todd. I think turn 7 or turn 8, one of the two. He got spun around. So that just, nail in the coffin, as they say. So, disappointing day for him. 18th position was James Golding, another very disappointing day. disappointing result for not only him but also his team. It had nothing to do with his driving. He drove beautifully on the Saturday. However, he just had some either car dramas or pit dramas, which ultimately ruined his run. 19th place was Macaulay Jones in the Pizza Hut entry. Then it was rookie Cameron Hill in the truck assist. 21st was Jack Smith. Then it was Tim Slade rounding up the finishers. And then in last place was Nick Percat, who unfortunately retired, I believe, due to a brake master cylinder failure or a major brake issue, which ultimately ended his run. And then technically after him was Shane Van Gisbergen and Brock Feeney, who were, as I said, disqualified. So that was all from the Saturday. Sunday was actually a bit more exciting this time around for the race. Qualifying real quick, David Reynolds did a fantastic job in not only topping qualifying but also topping the shootout. It was a bit of a gap this time around. It wasn't as close as Saturday, but David Reynolds was able to pinch it. Chaz Mostert actually led majority of the top 10 shootout until David Reynolds came along and destroyed him. Quick shout out to James Golding, who qualified third, which was incredible. So he started on the second row. That car's just looked very quick this weekend, and I'm so happy to say that. And I was also not really expecting them to do this well, to be honest. So I cannot wait to see how they go this year. The Sunday race, it was actually, as I said, more exciting than the Saturday race. It was actually some racing this time around. However, we did get off to a dodgy start. It did seem like everyone got off to a good start. David Reynolds had an average start. He wheel spun in second gear, which ultimately gave Chaz Mostert the lead into turn one. But then the race was actually ultimately red flagged on the first lap because at the back of the grid there was actually a collision with Macaulay Jones and Declan Fraser. They made contact on the straight, and Declan was spun into the pit barrier, which the red flag was brought out because of the barrier actually moved back a bit, so they had to fix that. But that also reminds me of a very disappointing day for Tickford. Before the race, not only did Declan Fraser retire after the first lap, they also were down a driver. I can't believe I forgot this, I'm sorry. But James Courtney crashed out into the shootout on his lap. He made contact with the inside barrier at turn 6 and broke the steering and just went straight into the wall. And unfortunately, they weren't able to repair him in time for the race. It was quite significant front-end damage. And this is technically the first proper crash Gen 3 has experienced. Well, it is actually the first crash we've seen in Gen 3. So teams had also learning about how much damage they take and also how to repair the car. And unfortunately, they didn't quite get there in time. I don't know if supplies were an issue as well, because I know that was an issue this weekend, how supplies, they didn't have, no team, there wasn't a single team that had enough supplies, pretty much. There was a massive shortage. But yeah, very disappointing not to even get to start the race after making it into the shootout. And the car looks amazing too. It looks quite average. But beforehand, with the Snowy Rivers livery, it looks incredible with it. Anyway, back to the race. Declan Fraser unfortunately retired on the lap 1. Also had front-end damage as well. Macaulay Jones was able to get back out. No harm done there. But once the racing got underway, it was quite exciting. It was another fuel tyre strategy race again. except it was quite interesting this time around. Shane van Gisbergen, I think he started 5th or something. He managed to climb his way to first, all because of his strategy. He managed to jump most of the drivers with he had a long mid-stint on his tyres. He just managed his tyres better. And ultimately, he actually managed to win the race ahead of Chaz Mostert after an epic battle. He also did a cheeky dive, a cheeky overtake on Chaz, which, in my opinion, I'm sorry if, this is just sort of out of place, out of order, but I'm just going with the flow, and I hope, and if you do like this, let me know, but it's better than reading a piece of paper. Anyway, sorry, don't know why I said that, but back into what I was talking about. Heading into turn 9, Shane van Gisbergen made a little bit of contact on Chaz. He was on the outside, and it wasn't a bump and run, but it was at the same time. That's the controversial part about it, is he did make contact, and he did ultimately go down the inside of Chaz, as he ran wide. Chaz ran wide, probably due to the contact. Definitely due to the contact, but I guess Supercars have considered that as an okay thing. Now, in my opinion, it was a bit cheeky. It was a bit of a Shane move. But he did, he did get the job done. In my opinion, he was going to get him anyway, especially probably at turn 11. So if he waited just a little bit, he probably had no problem getting past him. His tyres were 18 or 12 laps younger than Chaz's, so ultimately he would have just easily breezed past him at some point. So in my opinion, he should have just held off, but Shane being Shane, he went for it, and that's the thing with racing. I am giving him credit for it. You got to go for it sometimes, and that's what makes it exciting. But all is well for that part. There was a few little dramas. Todd Hazelwood was spun around by Thomas Randall. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. Cameron Waters, he had a disappointing day. Tickford in general, like I said. He was chasing Chaz Mostert down for the win for the majority of the race, but accidentally clipped the inside wall at turn 6, but turn 9, sorry, and just damaged his left steering arm severely, which ultimately ruined his day, and he was instantly out of contention from that point. But he actually was lucky not to hit the outside wall and cause more damage that there already is. So he did well to save that one. But without further ado, let's just get straight through into the results. So Shane van Gisbergen was able to actually win this race and keep it at this stage. So after starting 5th and having an amazing drive to conserve those tyres, and just, he just drove really well today, Sunday, to come home in first. I honestly thought Chaz was going to win. I wasn't expecting Shane to come, but he was like Bullet Bill in Mario Kart. They're coming. But Chaz Mostert finished second behind him. It was also a time certain finish, I forgot to mention as well. And then David Reynolds rounding up the top 3. So pretty solid day for Dave, especially after after Saturday's tough race where he became a tomato. Good recovery for Sunday. James Golding finally had a fantastic result for Newlon Racing. After a disappointing end to Saturday, they were able to rectify it with a 4th place finish just outside the podium on the Sunday. No doubt, I reckon he will get a podium this year. Definitely not who I was expecting to get a podium, especially... Okay, so I knew Golding was fast last year, but I was not expecting him to get a podium, especially, after round 1. But be up there after round 1. But after this weekend, I reckon he'll have no problem getting a podium sometime this year. Brock Feeney comes home in 5th position for Triple Eight. Brody Kostecki, he had a bit of a disappointing qualifying session on the Sunday, considering he was the fastest in Friday practice as well as Saturday qualifying. He unfortunately, I think, qualified 15th. I'm not too sure what happened or anything. I don't know if he just didn't have pace, but either way, he managed to recover to 6th. So that's a pretty solid result. They do have a fast car underneath them, Kostecki and Brown. So I'm hoping, and I'm expecting and looking forward to the Erebus guys getting a podium some point this year. Maybe even a cheeky win. Kostecki is quite handy behind the wheel. And of course, Will Brown scored a win in 2021 at Sydney Motorsport Park. So they definitely know how to do it. So keep an eye on them this year. I reckon they are in contention for a good result. Another good one is Andre Heimgartner. Solid result by him. Solid weekend, really good weekend actually. Not only did all the BJR cars finish Sunday, to get a top 10 result is, something to be proud about. Good to see them up around there. I was expecting him. Well, actually, you know what? Sunday, I actually made a prediction that Andre would actually end up around 8th. So to finish 7th, I think I predicted pretty well there. 8th was Jack LeBrock. 9th was Tim Slade. So again, massive shout out to Premier High Racing, Newlawn Racing, to have both cars finish in the top 10. It's an amazing result. I don't know if it's the car or their haircut, but they have been exceptionally well this weekend. And then rounding up the top 10 was DeWalt Racing's Mark Winterbottom, who actually, I believe, had some power steering issue. He was complaining about he only had 20% of the available power steering. I don't know if that actually was true or not. I know he was complaining early on in the race, but he drove quite well considering, if that's the case, and showing his experience. 11th place was Bryce Fullwood. 12th was Cam Waters after a disappointing technically end to his day. He still finished, but in terms of race performance, considering he was racing he was in second position, his race ended with that collision with the wall that he had. But to come home in 12th, it's not all bad. Could be worse. Better than nothing. Still some decent points. Will Brown comes home in 13th place. A bit of a disappointing day for him. I think he actually ended up getting a bit of a penalty for pushing, Cameron Hill wide at turn 11, which was unfortunate, but, that's racing. 14th place, Matty Payne. Another consistent result by him. 15th was Todd Hazelwood. He had he was actually really good in qualifying. He managed to qualify 9th in the shootout, but ultimately actually got spun around by Thomas Randall, who had a bit of an average day. He actually ended up getting a penalty for that. I don't know if there was if there was damage on Todd's car or not, but he lost a few positions there. Anton Di Pasquale comes home in 16th. Again, another disappointing result. They were nowhere, as I mentioned before. 17th, Scott Pye. I think he had some drama. I can't remember for the life of me. But, disappointing Sunday for him after a decent Saturday. 18th, Thomas Randall, as I mentioned, he received that penalty for spinning Todd around. 19th, Will Davison, again, disappointing end to his weekend, which was already horrible as it is. I don't mean to, dance on their failures, but I don't mean to ramble on about the failure either. I'm just completely shocked, as everyone else is, to be honest. But I reckon they'll bounce back. They'll do their homework. They'll study hard for the Australian Grand Prix, learn from their mistakes and see how the year goes from there. 20th was Jack Smith for BJR. 21st was Cameron Hill. As I said, he was spun around earlier, and just a disappointing day for him. 22nd, Macaulay Jones. After that incident with Declan Fraser, he was able to still finish and come home in 22nd. Nick Percat in 23rd position. Bit of a very disappointing weekend for Percat, while considering how well his teammate did. He was unfortunately nowhere this weekend, and apparently it was more to do with the car as well. As I said, he had to retire on Saturday, and unfortunately he just wasn't there Sunday. And rounding up the grid was Declan Fraser, who of course retired on the first lap, and then his teammate, ultimately James Courtney, never actually took part in the race due to the severe damage. So overall, decent weekend, decent start to the year. We're just going to have a quick look at the championship standings. Excuse me. So after the two races, Chaz Mostert is your championship leader coming out of round one. Of course, last year he actually led round one as well, but that's the best he could do. Hopefully this is a bit different. I would love to see him fight for the championship with Gizzy or even Kostecki or Waters this year. So I'm happy to see them do so well. And I'm really just a massive shout out to Walkinshaw. It's their first time basically switching manufacturers after being in the GM camp for so long. To see them do so well with the Mustang as well is pretty great to see. So massive shout out to all the boys and girls that work at Walkinshaw and get that car going. Second is Brody Kostecki. Third, Cam Waters. So if it wasn't for that crash, he probably would have still be the championship leader. But, it is what it is. Plenty of racing still left this year. David Reynolds, fourth. Fifth, Andre Heimgartner. Will Brown in sixth. Seventh is Mark Winterbottom. Eighth is Jack LeBrock. Ninth is James Golding. And then 10th is Scott Pye. Then 11th, after the disqualification, is Shane Van Gisbergen, Matt Payne in 12th. 13th is Bryce Forward. 14th, Todd Hazelwood. 15th, Tim Slade. 16th is Will Davison. And 17th is Anton De Pasquale. Again, disappointing weekend. I'm not going to mention that anymore. 18th is Brock Feeney. 19th is Tommy Randall. 20th is James Courtney. 21st, Macaulay Jones, and then it was Cameron Hill, Jack Smith, Declan Fraser, and Nick Percat rounding up the standings. Then we're just going to have a look at the team's championship. So Erebus is leading the way after round one, so that is pretty good motivation, I suppose, to do well next round. It's great to see them up there. Penrite Racing in second, Team 18 in third. Then it's Walkinshaw and Andretti United. Unfortunately, they had dramas with Nick Percat, so they weren't able to make the most of their weekend. Tickford Racing comes home in fifth after a disappointing Sunday. Brad Jones Racing in sixth, and then it's New Lawn Racing, Red Bull, Ampol Racing, and then Truck Assist Racing. Shelby Power Racing rounds up the 10, followed by Tickford, which is Tommy Randall and Declan Fraser squad, and then Todd Hazelwood Blanchard Racing Team rounding up the 12. Of course, they've only got the one car, so it will be difficult for them to get up there in the championship. But that is all the action from the Newcastle 500. Now, in my opinion, how did Gen 3 go this weekend? There's a lot of work needs to be done, in my opinion. In my opinion, the cars aren't ready for racing, and you could see that with the supplies being so low. And just seeing when James Courtney crashed, the fact that they weren't able to get it repaired because they just didn't really understand how to fix the car properly, because, like I said, this was the first time we've seen a crash happen in Gen 3. So it was a massive learning curve for everyone. But unfortunately, I'm really hoping that improves. There was a lot of pit issues as well, especially with the rims, with the tyres. It had a lot of issues with the guns as well. And in my opinion, I'm going to be honest, I don't want to shit on Newcastle. It's a fantastic place for racing. It's a beautiful backdrop with, with the beach and the boats and all that. But unfortunately, in terms of Gen 3 cars, it's not a great racetrack for racing. Sure, for going super fast, especially in the qualifying we saw on Saturday. But the racing, the cars are too wide, and there's not many overtaking opportunities for that track. I like to call it the Monaco of supercars. It's, again, wide cars, small track, little overtaking opportunities. Very similar to Formula 1. But however, in saying that, Aussie racing cars were insanely exciting as well as Super 2. However, there was a lot of carnage in both categories, actually. But in terms of supercars, not a huge amount of racing was done. Parity-wise, you can't really make a comment on it. I felt like this track suited the Camaros a bit better than the Mustang. In terms of the corners-wise, I think the Mustang is actually better on the straights than the Camaro is. And I say this because in race 1, you could sort of see when Gizzy was chasing Waters down, when they're on the straight heading into turn 2, Cameron Waters was able to pull away from Gizzy. But by the downhill section and the staircase, Gizzy was right up there ready to pass him at turn 11. That could have something to do with the fact that Gisbergen is very talented, but the Gen 3, the Camaro just looks a bit nicer around the corners. But in terms of parity and stuff, we probably won't know until the Australian Grand Prix or round 4 or round 5. I don't think this track... I already knew this track wasn't going to be great to determine which car is better. So we'll have to find that out another time. But overall, the cars look fantastic. They sound incredible. Apparently, they're harder to drive, which is also something I'll get into in a minute regarding the opinion controversy. But overall, it could be worse, but, it's a tricky one. There's a lot of work to be done, basically. But we're off to a good start. It isn't the best, but I'm sure we can get better from here. If they do one thing, listen to opinions, and we'll get into that. It's a nice transition. So if you may or may not know, I don't know, especially if you listen to the press conference, Shane van Gisbergen basically denied any question he was asked in the press conference on Sunday, and even in the interview when he parked the car at the end of the race, he just said he did all the talking on the track. That's all he's going to say. He basically didn't want to talk because, according to him, he was basically shut down for giving his honest opinion on the cars on Saturday. And even every driver, even David Reynolds he actually mentioned that they aren't allowed to say anything negative, which is just insane, and in my opinion is, and people probably think, Gisbergen's like, he's a bit of a dickhead for not talking to the journos, and he's bad considering he's the leader of the champion. I'm going to stop that voice, I'm sorry. But considering he's, the icon of supercars at the moment after winning the championship two times in a row, everyone's looking up to him and stuff. And the fact that he is shutting down supercars, like shutting down all media, basically. But in my opinion, he's actually entitled to do that. He people should already know that he's quite shy. He's a fantastic driver, but he doesn't like being in the spotlight. He's actually quite a shy person, especially in front of cameras and stuff. So I have no issues with him doing that, especially when finding out, and he even mentioned on socials about opening it up about he was trying to be honest about the cars, because the truth is they are different. This is the first major change supercars have faced since 1992. And as David Reynolds said, he made a really good point. They've basically been driving the exact same car or the same blueprint for 10 years, and then all of a sudden they've just had to change. Like, they had insane amount of downforce, and then all of a sudden it's taken away from them, basically. So it is very different, and of course drivers are going to complain. But that's not the issue. The issue is, I'm rambling on, but the main issue is supercars aren't taking in the opinions. They're shutting drivers down for actually trying to give them constructive feedback. What supercars need to do, now I'm just an outsider, so I don't know all the stuff that goes on, but in my opinion, supercar, in order to improve Gen 3, because this is only, the start, we can easily improve the cars, but they seriously, good opinion, bad opinion, whatever, they need to listen to the drivers, because without the drivers, there is no racing. It's all about the fans and the TV and all that stuff, but in reality, if we didn't have the drivers, we wouldn't have that. So they need to seriously listen to their drivers, because at the end of the day, they're the ones actually having to drive these things around for so long and put on a show for the fans. And if they're struggling massively, it's going to affect their way of racing. It's going to affect their enjoyment, and if they don't enjoy it, they won't want to be there. So I feel like supercars just need to listen to their drivers, especially Shane Van Gisbergen. He's a 3-time winner, is the lead star at the moment, and he knows his way around a supercar. So they really need to just take in the feedback from drivers and don't be afraid of criticism. But that's all I'm going to get into about that. But that's all I basically have for today's pod. If you do like this, feel free to, hit a like button if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe as well. But if you're on Spotify, feel free to hit that follow button as well. And let me know on my socials. You can reach me on Instagram at DanielLeckel35. Let me know if you have any questions you want me to answer or any feedback, because unlike supercars, I'm happy to take some feedback, good or bad. Even on YouTube, feel free to leave a comment here and there. But so next event is, of course, the Australian Grand Prix. In terms of video-wise, the next pod is my F1 debrief. Of course, F1 returns to Jeddah for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. So I'll be doing a debrief for that. And then the following fortnight will be the Australian Grand Prix, where we will have both F1 and Supercars. So that'll be an exciting next few weeks. And of course, I'll be hopefully going to Adelaide Motorsport Festival. So if you're going, great. If you're not, I highly recommend you do so. I'm rambling on. I'm going to end this pod. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a good day, and I'll see you in the next one.